Warhammer Online, the home of wargaming.
And oh no, welcome to Wargamer Online, and tonight is Monday Musing, so I'm hoping you can hear me. I've just noticed I've got a configuration session, so before I bring my guests in, I am going to have to mess around a little bit with the sound. But in the meantime, let's say hello, and let's hope it doesn't cause a crazy reverb for everybody out there. Ralph, how you doing, mate?
Splendid, absolutely fine. Thanks.
Jolly good. And Coleman, you're in the chat as well.
Hey up.
I don't think they can hear you, actually. So what I'm going to do, just for a minute, is get that configured while I introduce the show, which is going to be a bit of a challenge anyway, isn't it? Let's face it. But we can try, can't we, as I'm talking. What is tonight's show about? Let's call this up. Let's try not to panic. We are going to be looking at the latest news that came out of Adepticon, basically. That's what tonight's show's all about. Don't mind me while I just get those guys to come in on sound. And hopefully you'll be able to hear them soon. That's looking good.
We get comments that they can hear us in the chat, yep.
Pardon? We
get comments in the chat that they can hear us.
Oh, okay, that's fantastic. Well, I'm hoping they can hear you now for certain. But I'm not 100% certain they can. That's going to be interesting. In fact, Ralph, can you give me a testing?
Testing, 1 2 1 2.
I think we're good, actually. I think, Ralph, you're a little bit loud, but you know what? I think we're good to go at that. So, sorry about the little technical hitch at the end there. Something was bound to collapse, and it did. So, there you go. Well, right, we're going to be having a look at the news that came out of Games Workshop as they announced it as Adepticon. I know that was like a week ago, or at the weekend, or whenever it was. And I think it was Friday, wasn't it? Thursday or Friday last week. So I know it's been a while, but I've been out and about. Ralph, you were about to jump in and correct me?
Thursday morning.
Thursday morning. So, look, early hours of Thursday morning, maybe, or late Wednesday. Either way, it's been a while. But I thought it would be worth visiting these guys and seeing what they've got to say about it. There was a lot of exciting stuff to see. I'm pretty giddy about several things, some more than others, but you know, notwithstanding the reason my desk is absolutely full of half-built magma drops right now. Obviously, that's because of the Slanesh news, so burn the heretic. Let's catch up with the chat, and let's see who's in there. I'm just going to have to move my mic, because my mic's in the way of the chat. How bad is this? I'm really having a bad setup day, aren't I? It's like a bad hair day, but like the equivalent of being online. Derpimus Maximus, Elster Nation is in there. Gonk is in there nice and early. Hey Gonk, how you doing, man? Good name. Derpimus Maximus has made beer at the weekend. Joe Scoville is saying good evening all. Ah, dear me. I can't catch up too much on the chat, otherwise we'll be here for ages. There's a lot of talk about beer, apparently, in the first 80 litres? Come on. That's like 20 magma drops at least. DJ the Lucky One is saying hi. Daryl Hewitt is joining us. Roa is in there. Amit has joined us. We did invite Amit on the show, but he's complaining his face just isn't beautiful enough alongside ours. Amit, I think you've got a self-esteem problem there, mate. You're a gorgeous fella. Andrew Buxton says hi all. DJ the Lucky One, I think saying welcome. All his dust is in there. Hey mate, how you doing? Neil Thordalim, DJ the Lucky One, Andrew Buxton. I think that's it. Thordalim. Phil will be there. A review for iServe Pro. Yeah, we could do one. I'll do it next April if you like, if that's any good.
There's 364 days to go for that review.
364 days to go. So yeah, I'll do a review for that. Why not? It can't do any harm, can it? I'm wondering whether people can still hear you. So I'm slightly confused about whether that's coming through, because I'm getting some weird stuff around the setup. So can you just give me a testing again, Ralph, please?
Testing 1 2.
No, you are there, and nobody's complaining you're not there. So let's relax and just assume that everything is good. No, let's not have you back at beeping, Coleman. I think one show where you had to beep every 30 seconds was enough. for any of us with any realm of sanity whatsoever. It's going to be one of those shows tonight, folks. Let's face it, it's ill-prepared. I've got no excuse at all other than I was building custom Magmadroths. I'm trying to make 7 Magmadroths look different to each other. And if you're familiar with the Magmadroth kit, there's not a lot going for it in terms of creating difference. So I've been building howders and all sorts of stuff in an attempt to try and eke some difference out of the model. It's a beautiful model. It just doesn't have a lot going for it in terms of posability. But still, Martin Dick says hello all. Ollie's just says testing 1 2. Daryl says we can hear you all fine. It depends what happens if I say pro. Here's heresy. There you go. There you go. We're there. We've caught up on everything, and I'd like to start almost jumping straight into the Adepticon news, really. I think that's probably the wise thing to do. So if I bring up... really, I think the best thing to do is to go down Games Workshop's own post that they did back on the 28th of March. Where they kind of released, as they do now when these events are on, they drip feed news to us. So if you start at the top and work your way down, I think it pretty much tells you everything that's coming out in order. There was a lot in that announcement. First up we have Forbidden Power. So I think we finally got a sense of what Forbidden Power is about now. It's another expansion set. It's of the ilk of, it feels along the lines of Malign Sorcery. Clearly there's a bunch of stuff going off in there around powers. There's definitely some, is that some new terrain ticking off in the back of that image there? Shall I just bring that up? That you know, that's very cool looking stuff. We've also got these little bit of spells going through the middle of here. So yeah, we started off by talking about assuming this was something about the return of the Tomb Kings when this was first hinted. I think that was a show that you and I were on, Ralph. I'll tell you what, I'll start with you, Ralph, because, you know, I'm just looking at what's in the Forbidden Powers box. You've got a terrain piece, which looks very much, you know what, I'll bring Coleman in to talk about the terrain piece, because I've got a feeling that looks a little bit in line with, you know, some of the stuff that you see within the human faction still, the Arcanums and stuff. Yeah. We've got the Endless Spells element, which one of them is a piece of terrain, a bit of fallen rock work, and then some broken, and I think that's Gloom Glass, isn't it? Or whatever it's called, broken. So that looks like it's out of the Shadespire set. And then some weird raft of bones basically in there as well. And then along with a couple of very cool looking stuff, bit of Nagash's head. And then the real sort of Tomb Kingsy kind of boat crossing the sort of River Styx type stuff that we've got going off. So I tell you what, Coleman, let's jump back to you. This piece of terrain, if you like. What are you thinking?
It does, yeah. I mean, it does remarkably look similar to the top of Hurricane. This kind of orby structure is almost like a copy. I think what's been said about it that it's going to be a sort of central piece to fight for.
Yeah.
By the look of it, it is quite sizable.
I mean, they mentioned archaic and terrible weapons in this, so I'm assuming this is going to be some kind of, you know, the way this this Arcanum stuff works in the Battle Tome. They don't have a Battle Tome, do they? But you know what I mean, for the free people. They are magic amplifiers, is that correct? That's how these things work for the free people, isn't it? And I can't remember the name of the actual magic house that uses the equipment, but hopefully, Coleman, you can help me out. Certainly, if Jack was here.
Yeah, if Jack was there. But narratively, I think there was the hint to all those powers and abilities that Sigmar stashed away when the chaos was sweeping over. So obviously there is a reference that it's all have some sort of other origin.
Yeah.
Whether it's going to be some mechanism to for order to start pushing back, or is it going to be again something that's going to be available to everybody?
Yeah.
Well,
I think
even looking at the on those legs, those obelisks, the stylization of it, the writing, it certainly looks very Azerite and Sigmarine, and to an extent, there's we've got those sort of Stormcast halos on those really.
Yeah. So Ralph, what are you thinking in terms of your expectation from what we talked about to what we've got, or at least what we've been told about?
Well, it's clear an extension of the malign sorcery. And in this respect, what it is basically, from a game mechanics point of view, I think we're going to get objects that need to be placed that are going to be basically whoever is controlling them will unleash the spells, can use the spells that are contained within them, which will provide a whole new game mechanic on the table that we hadn't had before. Because I don't think these will be faction specific, because in the article they says everybody can use them.
Yeah.
So these are magical items, stuff, relics, whatever you want to call them, that Sigmar locked away, and the Stormbolt got broken.
Interestingly enough, as well, Sigmar locked away with the assistance of Teclis, didn't he? So
yeah.
It's interesting to see that name being picked out. I mean, they could have chosen a whole bunch of people to help him lock stuff away, couldn't they? But it's interesting that they've name dropped Teclis at some point. So hopefully that's a sign of things to come as well.
Probably.
Yeah.
Rarely, it's the almost gun on the table in Act 1. If it's there by the Act 3, somebody will get shot. It's not there by by pure chance. That name dropping.
Yeah. Okay, so outside of that as well, I mean, like I say, from my perspective, it's a little bit early to tell. It clearly is an expansion pack. What have we seen in these expansion packs in the past? We've seen missions, we've seen realm-specific rules, we've seen, the endless spells. I think there is a hint in there with this. It's not even a hint, it's a pretty direct reference. Essentially, these are the most powerful endless spells out there. But, only if you're willing to use them at your own risk. So certainly there's going to be a backlash to summoning these endless spells in some way or another. You're going to have to sacrifice. Usually the mechanic we've seen for this is if you pull anything out like this, either if you fail to cast it, you receive mortal wounds. You may well even receive mortal wounds. They might have to up the ante on this. So, yeah, are you prepared to take D3 mortal wounds just to bring this thing into existence, no matter who you are? I really like in the back of this graphic, and it's probably entirely unintentional, but they've got two of these sort of weird rib cages lining up against each other over a crevice, and it does look like it's trying to form a bridge of some description. So
like a bridge, yeah.
It does make you wonder whether this is some kind of crazy unit transporting, magismo, like a bony flying carpet, because just it befuddles me what that thing is meant to be, if you know what I mean. It's unless it is some kind of weird portal, which would make sense, because we've seen that. What we haven't seen is some of the obvious stuff, when you see the endless spells, and we'll talk about a little bit when we get onto the battle tome. For the Fire Slayers, as you tend to see, as Jack highlighted, there's one of three types. There's the straight line doing damage one, there's boost your own unit, and there's the one that generally messes up magic, so that kind of, they've got a certain type, haven't they? And it's pretty difficult. Bear in mind there are 5 pieces, 6 if you count this large scenery piece, so there's 6 pieces inside this box set, obviously along with accompanying missions and the rest.
I actually think they're all scenery pieces.
Whoa. You think they're all scenery pieces? You're probably right. Well, I don't know. They do describe some of them as endless spells offer enormous power if you're willing to pay the price. So,
Well,
you know.
That's just it. I mean, I think I think what we'll see is that they need to be placed in the setup of a scenario, or they can be placed in the setup of a scenario, and whoever controls in a given turn that particular scenery piece controls the spells in a bubble, or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that could work.
Like a central thing to fight over, and then
Yeah.
depending on which one you choose, there will be different abilities attached to it, affecting everybody on the battlefield.
Yeah. Just have a quick check on the chat. Furious George has dialed in. Martin Dick says skeleton spell would make an awesome mount. Which one would that be referring to? It's got to be the boat, surely. Or is he talking about the weird rib cage? Either way, it's all good. Confirm that to me, will you? Oh, a little bit of a yawn, and I probably blew everybody's eardrums out there. Dipimus Maximus says, I can see it being used as a base for anything that would fit on the same size or bigger base as the spell. Okay, yeah, that sounds cool, actually. It'd make a very good base. Okay, and Homish is saying hi. Up next, then, and you might find me a wee bit giddy about this, I'm going to take a look-see at the new battle tome. So, as we knew, there was... Okay, did we know? Didn't we know? What we knew was a whole bunch of factions were getting updated battle tomes before the end of the year. We'd seen that in one of the previous news articles. What we didn't know was whether we were going to receive some kind of Grand Alliance books, or whether they were going to be standalone battle tomes. Fire Slayers were pictured in the back of the order image. Certainly one of the things we were going to see.
Concerned, the rumours were strong with that one.
Yes, and that's the good thing about it, because they were right. And here comes Fire Slayers. What have we got going off here then? They're hot right now. I like that. I think we could talk about this a little bit, because both you and I, Coleman, are Fire Slayer players. We had a list, if you like. We
different views on the release as well, at least for what we know so far.
Yeah, true. So we had a list, didn't we? We had a list of things that we hope to achieve, and I think your list is a little bit different to mine, but not. I think the main issue was you're more demanding. The main issue for me was I wanted Fire Slayers to be more than a one-horse race, or a single-trick pony, whatever particular saying we want to use. And the reality was, if you as time has gone on, and in truth, right from the beginning, if you wanted Fire Slayers to be competitive, now forget the whole narrative play and stuff, which you could take whatever you want, and in many competitive games I've shown up with quite a diverse range of stuff, and in fact I played Fire Slayers the other week and I had 2 Magmadroths in a 1500 point list. It was essentially suicide, but this was the point. If you wanted to compete in some way, you had really 1 or 2 choices, and I think the first choice was Berserkers at 30, accompanied by a Rune Smiter. So, and if you do that, you can create a magmic tunnel, pop up in the middle of nowhere. You got a 9-inch charge, re-rolling one of your charge dice. You've got 30 sling shields piling in, 6s doing doing a mortal wound. Once they got into combat, they had 2 attacks each, which wasn't ideal or optimized because they're on 32mm bases, but 2 attacks each made up for a lot of that. At least you can kind of rack the attack number up, especially if you were attacking a unit on a broad front, so it was always nice to hit those big units. And even better, once they were in combat, you've got their little throwing axes, so you could take a little pot shot in the shooting round. It was never great. It was 4s and 4s, so you got 20 dudes left in combat, you were going to get 5 through, and there's no rend on that at all. So it wasn't great, but it was always like a bonus thing. It was always nice to be able to do it. I certainly have pulled some trickery off in the past, like charging a broad front unit and a character at the end, and then measured every single Fire Slayer within 8 inches of the character and thrown the sling shields across at the character, and I've killed the buffing character just on charge, which
Yeah.
you know you've got to be lucky, and you've got to make sure you get a nice big charge. But you know, fantastic news. In the past, I've used things like taking the Rune Sun on Magmadroth and moving him forward to guarantee me 3 dice on the charge, re-rolling one of them. You know, that's pretty good if you absolutely want to guarantee that. But it was a 240 point, and again felt like a one trick. I think your only other option really, which I started to use more and more towards more recently, was the half guard berserkers.
Yes,
and accompanying a character.
With-
Either give it
with
Grimwrath
a hero.
Berserker. Sorry.
With a hero, either Grimwrath Berserker just to maximize the devastation, or Battlesmith to reroll saves.
Yeah. The Battlesmith's
with
good.
Yeah, because then if he plants the icon, you can't retreat, but you reroll fail save rolls. And they are on 5s.
Yeah.
And you still get the after save on 4-up.
Yeah, exactly. And that as long as they're within that character,
slightly more durable than on paper.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is they felt like a good second option. Yeah. Hello. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. You know, either these or these, and
that was it.
Forward, and hopefully, you'll get to the objective points quick enough before the battle runs out to actually start getting points. Which I'd say, okay, the runes help a bit because you can take that extra 4-inch move in one. I used to take it in the first round just to steer some march on the objectives.
Yep.
And then obviously, if you pop a unit with the Rune Smiter, you can put it directly on the objective. But yeah, there's not been a lot of fun.
No, not for some time now. Not for some time. So we both wanted, that was a hell of a long point to say what we, you know, I think every Fireslayer player out there in the world wanted change. What I've done, by the way, I've noticed people are asking, saying that you're quite quiet. Coleman, what I've done is up the microphone volume for you.
Oh, excellent.
But I'm going to have to ask Ralph, while we just chat through Fireslayers, could you just either temper your volume or knock down your microphone a little bit more? I know you did that earlier, so might be worth doing that in terms of volume, that is. I mean, are you just moving the mic further away?
Should work.
That's completely old school, mate, but I love it.
Should work.
So the other thing we wanted, and I think was, I wanted to be able to use my Magmadroths. I wanted to be, and I asked for 2 things. I'd like them to be competitive, you know, as in stand up against that alternative option. As a, hey, you know, I've got 200, 300 points left. Do I take another unit of 20? Or do I take a Magmadroth? I'd like that to be a genuine debate, rather than, well, of course I'm going to take another unit of 20. What else would I take? You know, so it'd be nice for that to happen.
When you play the Magmadroth, it's because you really desperately want to play the Magmadroth, not because you want to win the game.
Yeah, you just want to see Magmadroths on the table. That's what it was about. Yeah. It always was about that. So where did that leave us? I think also what we talked about was an alternate unit type, and I think this is where it split a little bit. We said it would be fantastic to see like a Magmadrakey kind of heavy cavalry, but smaller than the Magmadroth. I interestingly enough, Jack really pushed back on that. He said, I don't think you need that middle thing. You know, they're not a cavalry army. Dwarves march around on their feet. Except for these heroes which have jumped on the back of these fiery beasts and conquered them, you know, and I kind of, as we went through the chat, I agreed with Jack on that. It was one of those things, I feel like I need to fill that middle space, but the alternative was to make the option of somehow making Magmadroth's battle line. That was the alternative, of which Jack pushed back and said they're never going to make a character a battle line option. That's not going to happen. And you know, not long after that, zombie dragons were done. Still not a character, it has to say, but it is a behemoth, so it's still not a character. So he's absolutely right on that front. But, and I think this is the important bit, let's visit this opening text right now.
Yeah.
Fire Slayers, forge your army anew. Ha 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 ha. Please. Updated allegiance abilities and war scrolls. That's the important point for me. Jack's other point was we've seen battle tome updates and we've seen rule updates within generals handbooks, but what we haven't seen really is significantly the war scroll shifting in any respect. So I'm hoping we see some of those war scrolls changes, because some of the stuff has felt a bit weird. Hitting on 4s for the Rune Father, for instance, with only 3 attacks, wounding on 3s with a -1 rend. Just felt like that Rune Father just didn't have the punch you needed him to have. He was so compromised. So it breathes new life into the Fire Slayers, offering a wider range of army compositions than ever before, from a rampaging pack of magma droths, yes, to serried lines of magma spewing Auric Halfguard. I've only got 10 of them. I'm still excited, but I have only got 10 of them.
I've got 25.
Battletome Fire Slayers also sheds a new light on the history of these goal-seeking mercenaries. So we're going to see some new lore. That's incredibly exciting for me. I'd like to see the lore expanded.
Absolutely, yes.
And interestingly enough, establishes them as a major player in the narrative of Soul Wars. I mean, come on, what more could you want from life?
Salamander Riders.
So we're going to move on to our next bone of content.
I'm going to be perfectly serious now. I'm over it now. You know. I totally agree with you. This is obviously we need to see what the changes are going to be, but this is a good promise. It's a good promise. It's a good start. Let's not forget that was one of the first 2 or 3 battle tomes for AOS. So obviously it falls short comparing to AOS 2 and all the new rules and the meta as it stands now. It just falls really, really short. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that yes, even war scrolls are getting updated. I think I'm okay now with the endless shenanigans.
Let's get into that. So you're old school stunty player, I have to say, which is cool. I'm new to it. My love of the dwarves grew alongside my beard, so it's a relatively.
I'll tell you what. If I'm gonna make a concession, then yes, on Fire Slayers would probably be the most likely. If they're gonna give endless spells to KO, I'm gonna rage.
Well, let's get into that. So, how are you okay with it? We had a little chat about this, and I think our little public spat on the Wargamer Online community, where basically what we were saying was, my point was, if I'm okay with a dude creating a magma tunnel that a whole bunch of other dudes can jump down, run across the battlefield, and then a new tunnel opening opens up in the middle of the battlefield, and all my little dudes pour out. If I'm okay with that, I'm also okay with the very same rune smiters creating magmic creatures or magma formations like a wall of lava, etc., etc. To me, okay, the creature is the only thing that stretches it a little bit, because like a formation or a big splash of lava going across the table, I'm with the creature which is animated in some way. I mean, you go, well, that's the one that stretches it.
If you really try to bend your mind around, breathing some Vulcatrix spirit into it.
Yeah, I like that. You've just sold me on it. Because this is the whole thing, you've got that whole Vulcrix and Grimnir sort of demise, haven't you? And, this is where the Year Gold comes from and those kind of things. The terrain piece, I love. I'm just so happy with the terrain piece.
That is so beautiful. I mean...
I think we're all agreed on the terrain piece then, yeah?
Yes.
Is that okay? Wow, I'm going to mute that. Sorry about that, folks. I knew there was some scenes later on which I'm just trying to bring up now. So yeah, it's just beautiful. The rear of the terrain piece with the pumps and stuff on. The little billows to keep the forge going. Bellows. Did I say billows? Bellows. Billowing bellows. And
I don't even mind people calling it pizza oven.
Oh man. You just turn your back for 5 seconds and people calling it a pizza oven. It's bound to happen, isn't it? It's the internet at the end of the day. I love it. I absolutely love it. Do you know what I love even more? I've been searching for some way of doing my super cool rune smiter with his forge and searching for some iconography to kind of develop that. And in seeing that, I'm going to have to create like a mini version of that forge on the back of a Magmadroth. You know, that's it's just got to happen, hasn't it? Let's face it. Right.
It is a beautiful thing, and yeah, I was sold on, you know.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm pretty excited about this. I hope it comes soon. I really do. You know, it's going to break my heart a little bit. I'm working on this Iden of Deepkin army for the tournament, and I just know that I'm going to fall back in love with my Fire Slayers again. And it was so easy to move on to Iden of Deepkin while I'd kind of played Fire Slayers to the point where I couldn't play them anymore, sort of thing. Like I said, I did that game recently where I dropped into two Magmadroths. I think I was gone by mid-turn 2. Pretty much, you know, most of my army was gone. That was against, crikey, Flesh Eater Court. It's a painful experience.
There's one thing about them.
Yeah.
I'm finding fascinating because they are, at the moment, they're not the most fascinating faction to play. You know, they're not the most fun faction to play. But when it comes to the lore, when it comes to the models, you know, when you look at them, they are just so full of character.
Yeah.
You just can see, you know, the poses when they, you know, those Volkite stuff, you know, stand on just tiptoes of 1 foot and with, you know, with those arms outstretched with 2 axes. It's just such a beautiful pose. And it's just, you know, the kind of come at me, bro. You know, from every single model. It's hard not to love them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you know, because Magmadroths were so terrible, but, you know, if you wanted to buy 10 Berserkers, it was £35 for 10 Berserkers, or it was £50 for the Get Started box.
Yeah.
Which gave you 10 Berserkers and essentially a Magmadroth for £15. You know, plus an additional character, which I can never quite remember which character was in there. Probably the Rune Smiter.
No, in the Star Collecting box, you had all 3, so Runefather, Rune Smite, Rune something.
Yeah, wasn't there an additional character in the Start Collecting box, or no? They just took they used to show it with the Runefather on the Magmadroth and the Smiter on foot, didn't they? And I think that's what. Yes, but you're right. You could also put the Runeson on foot, couldn't you? So it was a pretty good deal, wasn't it? Let's face it. So all I did every time I wanted to add 10 dudes was buy another Start Collecting set, which meant I ended up with 7 Magmadroths in total, of which I only ever built and painted 3 of them. So upon that news, and I may be getting a little bit too excited, I've built the other 4, and this is how I'm playing them, with no sight of the battle tome whatsoever, so this is terrifying. I've got a Runefather on Magmadroth, I've got 4 Runesons on Magmadroth, 2 with the Javelin, 2 with the Ancestral War Axe, which I was just showing on camera because that is actually, just showing it now, that's the Ancestral War Axe. I decided it was a little bit understated, so I've been building them a mini version, if you like. I wanted something with a bit of length. They're on the back of a really tall dude, so the idea of just bopping people on top of head, that wasn't enough for me. I wanted something that had a bit of reach, so I've been creating these longer axes, which have been built out of various spare components, and Fire Slayer players will recognise most of the components on those. So I've got 2 with the Ancestral War Axe, 2 with the Javelin, and that leaves room for 2 Rune Smiters on Magmadroth as well. So that's my 7 Magmadroths, which even if they left the points where they were, even if they left the points where they were, could be done within 2,000 points. But here's the caveat. I completely blow the behemoth slot out the water, don't I, for 2,000 points, because I think the limit is 4 behemoths in 2,000 points. Yeah. So, you know, it might not be able to do it. I still don't mind, because it will give me my option between Ancestral Warhacks and Javelin, because the Javelin is extremely compromised. At the moment, it's really compromised when it comes to combat. Yeah. Okay,
I tell
you what we're going to do. We're going to move on, and I might skip. Yeah, you know, there's. Shall we talk about? Just having a look at what we've got next. We've got Flora versus Fungus, the epic battle on. In Sigmar. We've got some Night Vault news. We've got hold on a second while I just get the right screen up. We've got Caradron Overlords going into Nighthaunt.
Night Vault.
And we've got a bit on Warcry. So I'll tell you what, Ralph, I'm tempted to ask. We'll come back to talking about Caradron Overlords, because that feels like a poor old Coleman comes along to these shows sometimes, and because he's an Age of Sigmar player, he's left with very little say when it comes to the 40k stuff. There's a lot of Sigmar news in here, but there is 40k news as well. So what would you like to have a look at next, Ralph, without getting too much into the order? Let's not worry about the order on the page. What would you like to single out?
Warcry.
Okay, so what did you find in Warcry? You know, from this release, what more did it give you over what we already knew in the very short announcement that had been made?
There was a lot of bickering. Well, there was a lot of talking in the community without even knowing what Warcry is going to be released at, that it was chaos only, and they put that to rest by saying, hang on a minute, no, there is going to be 8 playable factions, other than the 2 Chaos factions or the 4 Chaos factions that have been announced originally, that will be playable straight away and with existing models. So
we've got this little clip on the page, but what if your unshakable loyalty to Sigmar, Nagash, or the sheer raw power of destruction? Well, good news. At launch, 9 non-Chaos factions will be available to play with rules of their own. See if you can guess just what they are. And then we've got these symbols.
Yeah, there's only 8 symbols there. There's not 9.
Isn't there one in the center though?
No, the one in the center is from the. That's one of the Chaos factions that they've already disclosed.
Okay, so we've got Sigmar, we've got Death, we've got, I'm guessing, Oryx or Savage Orcs. We're not quite sure. Is that Iden of Deepkin there, or is that Daughters?
I think it's Daughters.
It's Daughters, is it? Bad Moon is in there.
Yeah.
Spiderfang?
I think so.
Yeah, and definitely some sort of spooky death head there. I tell you
what is exciting about that news? What is exciting about that news is that it gives players of all factions a new, in inverted commas, skirmish game for AOS. Whereas we've got the skirmish rules, which are good, but far and beyond what Kill Team did for 40k. So my hope is still that Warcry will fill that void for AOS and sort of make it the entry game into full-blown AOS, because, you know, if you only got to do like 5 or 10 models, you could be playing like in no time, which is the big advantage of Kill Team, and everybody was hoping that Warcry would be absolutely the same thing. And then a lot of people were disappointed when they only announced Chaos factions in the beginning. And with this, I feel they've sort of rectified the target audience for Warcry. But we'll see. We'll have to see. There's more. There's definitely going to be more information creeping up in the next couple of weeks, because I think we're going to see a June release of that game. So we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, it's early days yet. There's not a lot of information. Reassuringly, those additional factions are coming out. It does start to feel I'm wondering whether this is more Necromunda than it is Kill Team. You know, with the fact that we've got gangs set in a specific scenario. It's interesting that they've expanded it out quickly, though. Do you think that was down to pressure from community?
Hard to tell. Probably, because the backlash in the community was, you know, on Facebook, there was people going like, "Well, if it's only chaos, then I'm out of it. Don't talk to me about it," and that sort of stuff.
It's just really hard to say. It's really hard to say. Go on, Coleman. Sorry.
I mean, you know, it could have been because those two reveal shows were not that far from each other. It might have been that they, you know, they planned it like this, you know, from the very beginning. It just happened that there was that outcry that people, the chaos being only revealed at the very beginning, doesn't change anything, to be honest. You know, if the game comes out later on this year, you know, first half of the year, it's not going to be that long when it's all going to be revealed anyway. And people have a bit of a grumble at the beginning, you know, when the first reveal was done. I don't think it's going to stop anyone from buying into it once they see what's available, if what they're hoping for is available. So I wouldn't overestimate the noise and whether it's really exerting any pressure on.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, isn't it? If they did mobilize based on what the community said, we all know what the lead times are on these things. So whether it's whether I tell you, the litmus test will be: are the rules in the actual release as a printed book? Because I know with digital print you can mobilize fairly quickly now. Or is it going to be a supplement that you can download the rules and essentially for your underworld gang? You know, are those 8 factions there represented by units that have all had underworld releases? But I don't think they have. For instance, Marathi, that symbol there, which is very much a sort of Marathi symbol, and I think Amit may have pointed that out, or somebody pointed that out. Yeah. Daughters of Cain don't have an underworld gang, do they?
We're not talking about underworld warbands being playable in Warcry.
Well, I was saying if they needed to mobilize quick, they've got boxes. They've got boxes of custom models that would fit quite nicely into Warcry, haven't they? You know, you take the Fireslayer faction, you know, but you've only got 4 dudes, but that's maybe enough, you know.
I talked to a friend of mine who was actually at the presentation. He said in the Q&A session afterwards, they were sort of telling everybody that this is, you know, those are models from the normal existing AOS range that you can use with Warcry.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Rules are going to be included in the starter box is a completely different thing, but you know it doesn't matter. Yeah. It doesn't. For me, this was some marketing guy shooting from the hip when they did the original announcement, without realizing that, hang on a minute, there's more to it than, you know, just chaos guys, you know, and a bunch of terrain.
Yeah, but you know, I think importantly you do have to that consistency of message, and at the end of the day, like Necromunda is based in the Underhives. That's where it is. You don't play Necromunda, you know, on board a spaceship. And I know as they expanded it out, you've got different locales. But I think that first press release, or that first release to the community, was essentially doing it, just set the scene. You know, This is in some chaos waste with a bunch of gangs battling it out for supremacy, you know. It was about setting the scene, and you don't want to say this is about any model anywhere doing something, you know, and it's a bit vague then, isn't it? So I think you're right. Maybe it was just about, you know, that's the scene, that's the message, but, you know, very quickly within the community. And clearly they kind of recognize that, because whether they were prepared for it or not, whether it's been added since or not, you can see it in the narrative of this release on the community page. You know, what if your unshakable loyalty to Sigmar, Nagash, sheer roy power of destruction? Well, good news. So they were answering that question, you know, at launch 9, you know.
I I think you can hardly call me an advocate for whatever GW does. I think there is a big problem with, again, the community and a general feel of entitlement, and the whole mentality of, ooh, GW is releasing a game and I might not be interested in it. What the hell is going on? Well, if not, fine, there are another 50 games off the shelf that you can keep participating in.
Yeah, I think entitlement. I get what you're saying. I think it's a bit strong. People invest quite a lot into this, not only money, but time and effort. So there is that whole the fear of missing out more than anything. I wouldn't say it's necessarily entitlement, but there's a whole new game. I'm seriously into Order, and I wouldn't ever pick up a Chaos model because it's just not my faction. Now I'm not going to be able to participate in this new game. I think that's not the same as entitlement of they should meet everybody's need. It's more a question of disappointment, I think.
I think the disappointment came from the point of view that when they announced Warcry, they clearly said this is the best from both Kill Team and Warhammer Underworld.
Yeah.
So, they created the buzz.
Yeah,
and,
true.
When you look at Kill Team and you've got 20 factions you can play in Kill Team.
Yeah.
That's what people expected Warcry to be from the get-go. And if you then make an announcement where you say basically 2 Chaos Dudes, I can understand where people are being, disappointed in that possible release.
They are routinely now overhyping every single release. That's an issue on the other side of the argument.
I'm not sure overhyping is the case. This is like
the most. It's going to be something amazing for everybody, no matter what you play. And usually, I'm just sitting there thinking,
it's not a dwarf.
It's not a dwarf.
That's got no beard whatsoever. How can I possibly be interested in it? Okay, moving on. Let's go into some of the other stuff that was announced in the release. What caught my eye? Apocalypse. Interestingly enough, I think we're probably going to jump on a little bit to some. We'll move on at pace. Well, Apocalypse was interesting in terms of I quite like that format. We used to do some very, very big 40k games. I had the Apocalypse format. With the game playing so quickly, we'd seen in many respects people just playing the standard game at Apocalypse format, but it's nice to see it's revisited. The thing I noticed inside there, will I be interested in it? I don't get a lot of time for full day games or full weekend games anymore. So right now it's not going to scream at me. I'll be interested to see how they've done the mechanic, because there was always some fun rules in Apocalypse, which I think if you were a Tyranid player playing Apocalypse, you could have a lot of fun with things like the Endless Swarm rule, which was always very, very cool to play. I've seen that rule introduced in missions recently as well, which is great. I've seen that inside the Chaos release. What I did like when I reviewed the video in a little bit of detail, you'll notice there are, I think, clear plastic movement trays. So yeah, interesting stuff. So if nothing else, I'd probably be interested in some of that even for the smaller games, just to speed up some of those movements of the bigger units. I don't know, you could use them. Oh, Ralph's losing it, bless him. Look.
No,
not for movement trays.
That's a sauerkraut face.
All right, just not for you, Ralph.
No.
All right. Well, while you're moving your models around, I'll shift mine on a tray and go get a cup of tea.
Fine, fair enough.
You know what? I would so happily. I've been looking at movement trays, because we are moving again. Even in AOS, we are moving into bigger and bigger units.
There has been a drive towards that 30-40 unit. I mean, 40 inside Flesh Eater Courts.
I mean, I'm looking even with this position. I'm looking now at I need to seriously consider being able to put least one, maybe two unit warriors. Yeah, you don't want to be moving all that.
I don't think we can go through this review without giving some form of shout out to the event only model, because it's absolutely gorgeous. Nice little Primaris dude. I just love the helmet under the arm pose. The face is pretty cool. So again, solid sculpting. I do like to see that kind of more static upright pose, because I think you could have a lot of fun painting that pose. They don't necessarily look the most dynamic, but I don't need everything charging over a hillside for me. You know, I'm quite happy to have some of those at rest, reviewing the battle scene poses. So pretty impressed with that. We also saw the Librarian, which is looking fairly solid. That's definitely some kind of crazy Terminator armor kicking in, so one was assuming that's some kind of Primaris Termi army, isn't there? I can't remember the actual name for that, but it does look different, although it's only an early render. But the chest plate looks different to the Gravis armor. That looks like genuine old school Terminator armor, which I think looks pretty great. I don't think we'll come back. Somebody's asked us, have we seen the Sisters model? Yes, we have. It's looking incredible. We'll come back to that anyway. But before we go too far, I think we have to move on to Slaanesh for the last 10-15 minutes of the show, really. Ralph, I'm going to bring you in here for a bit. What caught your eye? I mean, and so much does catch your eye, to be honest, in this release.
First And the models are absolutely stunning. I'm feasting my eyes on what they've shown. It is an absolute... They're absolutely stunning models. And the great thing about them is, hey, you can play them in AOS and in 40k. So here we go. That's my next army. That's definitely...
Really? Wow.
Yep.
It's sort of commitment. I think there's a couple of things from an aesthetic point of view that really, really caught my eye. It's a move in absolutely the right direction for Slaanesh. They're both beautiful and horrific, and they've always kind of played with that. But in this one, they're almost more human and yet less human than they've ever been, if you know what I mean. And I'm picking out two of the models, really. I'm picking out the Keeper of Secrets, which both one at a first glance looks beautiful, and then in closer inspection, the face is almost goat-like. And you know, and I remember, you know, reading one of the early 40k books where this trooper, you know, sees his sister across the battlefield calling out to him, sort of thing, and he goes over to try and save her, and of course it turns out to be a Slaaneshi demonette. And it only really transfigures at the very last minute from, you know, him seeing his sister crying for help into this demon sort of sticking a blade through him. And this is the thing, is the actual look of the model doesn't need to represent what you're seeing, if you know what I mean, because they have this whole illusion thing going off around them. So for me, the idea of them being that little bit more ugly underneath that external beauty, if you like, and some of that ugliness coming to the surface, I really like. Without them necessarily being creatures. It's one of those things, I've talked about this for quite a long time with Jack, and I still haven't found the right words to describe how much I love this Keeper of Secrets model. It's just stunning.
Can I just quietly, meekly say that I am getting excited about this release?
But Coleman, where are the beards?
I'm not making commitments here, but I might be getting the book.
You might be getting the book.
I think.
I'm gonna get the whole lock, stock, barrel. But every single model twice, at least. Jesus Christ!
I think what they're doing amazingly with these designs is they dropped grotesque, they moved towards subversive, and in a very, very, very elegant way.
Yes, elegance is the word. I think summed up by, and I can't remember there must be a title for this character, isn't there? The Demon Prince, I think it is, isn't it? Or is it a mask? This is the a mask, isn't it? I think, or is it the Demon Prince? Either way, this character that I think sits on what looks like a 50mm base, and I've seen it in the video. You know, it's standing a good double height of a standard trooper, and in fact, you can see a standard demonette sort of jumping around above it. Ooh, excuse me. So you've got a sense of size there, but wow, look at that model. That is ridiculously wonderful. It's got a kind of Persian feel to it. It's got, you know, there's all sorts of this wonderful little, you know, it's like an evil genie sort of thing. You know, you've got that.
Exotian.
I wouldn't say Asian.
I think, you know, we've heard the Skaven, we've heard the Gates, you know, the more humoresque releases. And it's now a swing again towards the adults.
That is the mask model, by the way, obviously, because she's actually holding the mask. Which, again, what a wonderful model. You're right. You know, we've had the comic element of Age of Sigmar, both in the Skaven and in the Gloomspite, which is still, you know, I love the Gloomspite. I love that comedy sort of feel to it.
We need both. We need both, and and the Slanesh release will bring the balance, swing the balance the other way. I think.
This weird mirror in the giant hand. Ah, what a model!
It's wonderful.
Me personally, I was just blown away by the models.
Yeah.
I saw them. I instantly said, "This is an army that I need to paint this. Not just paint it, but also play it. I need to do this. It's just, you know, Christmas."
It is incredible, absolutely incredible. I definitely want to. I don't know whether I need to do it. You know, I've got plenty of armies to be working on. If time was not an issue, then yes, I would do the Slanesh guys tomorrow. But
for me, the big plus is, hey, AOS and 40k.
Yeah, true.
So, you know, that's a big plus for me.
So let's check the chat in the last 3 minutes of the show. We've got a few things here. Scott apologising for being late to the party, probably some time ago, so don't worry about it, dude. 7 magma drops, that's definitely more than the 4 behemoth allowance. I'm hoping for a rule that will let you get around that, but probably not. And by the way, I don't think magma drops are behemoths. They're quite small. Thordalim says they said 9, but they show 8 emblems, so I think that's referring back to you know, what we talked about with Warcry. Daryl says, have you seen the previewed first Full Sisters model today? Let's pull that up just as we close the show down. Derphimus celebrating another Primaris Lieutenant. Bluffer says, no new non-Imperium faction yet. Yeah, well, yeah, I get you. I'm not in a rush for a new faction. They are getting, I tell you what, the more I've been listening to some of the latest audiobooks, you are getting more and more references to Hrud. Somebody needs to do a word count on those books and look at how many times the Hrud get mentioned, because I swear it's getting mentioned more and more in the books, but, you know, who knows, probably not. The look for Slanesh really need to be aiming for an Uncanny Valley of feel, sort of uncertain wrongness. I love it. Daryl says, it's the pose, it's the graceful, almost serene advance. It embodies Slanesh perfectly. The Demon Prince Herald says, Thordalim, DJ the Lucky One, they are obscenely beautiful. So I think there's a lot of agreement out there, but Big Mech's coming in, and I can, even though I've not read his entire comment, he says, I'm clearly in a minority here. But for the time being, I can't see why people are so hyped for the Keeper of Secrets. I'll reserve judgment until I've seen it from more angles. Well, you are absolutely within your right to reserve your judgment, sir.
Watch the video. You can see him from a couple of angles in there.
In the video, you can see it from a couple more. But you know what? We all love a 360, don't we? Let's face it. And I think Games Workshop would do themselves a lot of favour by providing 360s right from day one. so people can have a good old look around the model, because it's the closest thing we can get digitally to getting our hands on the models. And I know they like to drip feed this stuff to us, but come on, just stick a 360 in there. We'd be a lot happier, GW, seriously. Or just send me one and I'll create a 360 for you.
Nice try, Phil.
Yeah, it's a nice try, isn't it? Yeah. Got a feeling it's doomed to fail, though. Right, okay, we are... I tell you what, well, I did say, while you guys chew the cud. So, out of the news that came out, what are you most excited about? I think I know the answer from Coleman, but from Ralph, sorry, but let's get that, Ralph. What are you most excited about?
Slanesh.
Okay. Coleman?
For me, it's got to be the new Sylvaneth Battletome.
So the new Sylvaneth Battletome, which wasn't even mentioned, yeah?
Yeah, but they hinted it when they said, trees against new battle terms, trees against
mushrooms. Yeah, I just so want to see those battalions now.
Excuse me. Right, well, before we go on, one last look at the Battle Sister. So we had this Battle Sister bulletin. I think we've seen this render before. Many of the design cues were from the Seraphim miniatures taken from the Gemini Superior. But what we've got... Hold on a second. Yes, that isn't the Gemini Superior, is it? One notable feature of the Seraphim is stylized hollow wings. It's wonderful, is the truth. I really like it. I love the face, actually, on the model more than anything. So I'm pretty impressed with that. But no, loving the armor, loving they get that pose just right. But I do like the slim down armor as well. I think that's pretty cool. And I know that the jaw is out on whether you need boot plates or not, but ultimately they're quite iconic part of the sisters. So, we're not going to see those go away anytime soon. But I'm liking them. I'm liking the look of them.
She'd fit right into a Stormcast army. Take the bolter away, drop a shield on there or a second sword.
She wouldn't look that bad at all. Pardon?
How do you fly on a church organ?
On a church organ? Well, you just have to play light notes.
Took a while, got there.
So there you go. I can't believe we're going to end the show on a dad joke. Big Mac says that's one of the Gemini. So is that not one of... hold on a second. Have I missed something there? That is the battle system model at the top. That is one of the Gemini. You know what? I pretty much thought that was the Gemini. I was thinking, that is a lot like the Gemini models. So it is it? So what we've got actually then is this model above is the sisters model, which actually, if you do look at it, there is some design difference. There's almost no design difference. So yes, okay, we've got two bolters, and pretty much no difference whatsoever. The armor is exactly the same, yeah.
Yep, looks like it.
Yes, so it is a Seraphim model, but they took the design cues from the Gemini Superior. Oh, who knows? Who knows? The 3D render is the Seraphim, says Big Mac. Thank you very much for confirmation on that. There's not a lot of difference in there. I'm just having a quick look now. The sleeves are the same. The gloves are the same. Obviously, the backpack's the same. The armor detail on the legs is the same. The chest is... They are literally the same, except for a change of weaponry where you've got two bolt pistols. I can't see much else changing on that. So that feels like... yeah. Well, no, not at all, because they were meant to be, sisters, so perfectly fine, isn't it? But it's not really revealing a lot, is it? Because we're seeing pretty much something we've already seen before. So I will keep waiting for this army. I wish they'd just released a lot of them, to be honest. Get on with it. Right. Guys, let's probably call it a night at that. We've been around for an hour. I think we went through the release. For me, the most exciting stuff, come on, you already know the answer to this. It's grumpy, fiery, angry dwarves. I'm pretty excited. And I know that on the global scale of what they talked about, yes, the Slaneshi stuff is absolutely beautiful and I can't wait for it. But the thing that impacts my hobby desk more than anything else they talk around there is just being able to hit the table again with my Fire Slayers with a big fat grin on my face, and the opportunity to play them in a different way. So we'll look forward to that. All that remains for me to do is to thank everyone who came along on the chat, to thank my wonderful guest Coleman.
Thank you.
And Ralph.
Always a pleasure.
Right, good night all, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.